We're back. Another episode of the Golden V Podcast, streaming live to the Golden V Podcast YouTube channel. Check us out online as well, facebook.com/Golden V Podcast and goldenvpodcast.ca, or check out buzzsprout.com/1869778. Returning as always, graciously as my guest for this week, Brett Mydske, captain of the Vancouver Warriors, in advance of a big matchup tomorrow night in Vancouver at Rogers Arena, starting at 7 o'clock against one of their favorite rivals, the Calgary Roughnecks. Brett, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's get right into this because I watched last week's game in Halifax. I had some notes. I want to shout out to my friend Earl Thomas, who actually sent me some notes as well. Earl's been on the podcast before, way back in season 2, talking about Vancouver Warriors lacrosse, and a substantially different team back then than the one we see now. But one of the things I wanted to start with, Brett, and it's probably, one of those questions that you're going to get asked that you may not like very much, is just last week's performance in Halifax. And I had a chance to listen to head coach and GM Kurt Malowski's post-game interview. I got some notes about that as well. What do you think's happening for you guys right now on the road? Seems like there's some challenges there.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we've lost 3 one-goal games on the road, and if you date all the way back to our home or our season opener in Colorado, I really think that was kind of a one-goal game too, right? They got a penalty shot, an empty net, and we're kind of forcing transition. So you look at that, and you got 4 road games that were decided by 1 goal. It's tough. It's tough because even if we split that, we'd be in a completely different situation. But it is what it is now. I mean, you look at probably last 3 road games. Like last game, I thought we kind of had a crappy last 10 minutes of the second and first 5 of the third. So 15 minutes, we kind of didn't play the game we usually play, and it ends up costing 1-goal game at the end of the day.
Well, because there's a bright spot in there too, right? I mean, you can focus on the negatives, and I don't ever mean to focus on the negatives. I'm always trying to look at how those trends help inform the game and what's going to happen in the next game. But there's a real bright spot for you guys on the road too, because of that great game you guys played in Calgary against this same Roughnecks team back on December the 28th, when you guys faltered a little bit in the third quarter, but pulled out a 14-10 win. And quite frankly, I thought you really outplayed Calgary in that game. And I don't know if I know, or if I have a number of the stats or categories in front of me, but just your consistency and your performance in that game, 3 out of 4 quarters, maybe there's something you could take out of that game that's going to help you guys next time you're out on the road.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the last game. I think we definitely been preaching be disciplined, stay out of the box, because I mean, you look at that game, the only reason why they went on that 3-goal run or third quarter run, I think we had probably 4 penalties that quarter, right? So even though they went on a little bit of a run, I think they scored 3 goals in the quarter, and I think it was 3-1. So we didn't feel like we were actually playing too bad. I think we just got in a lot of penalty trouble that kind of took the flow out of the game. Like our offense couldn't get going in the third quarter because they were regging the ball the whole time, right? We were short-handed. So the fourth quarter, we didn't take any penalties, and all of a sudden they got a lot of touches and got back in the groove and ended up, was that the game when Keegan Ball got, did he take over in the fourth quarter? Or Kevin Crowley had the big game.
Calgary, the game against San Diego the following week was the game that I was thinking about, the 6-goal fourth quarter soft trick.
I think Kevin Crowley had the big game.
Right. I mean, because there's some other things that popped up for me too, and Earl had some notes. The 2 shorthanded goals last week on the same power play, that was killer. There's the shorthanded goal. There's that strange goal, and maybe I need to read the rule book better. I wish I had the highlight of that goal that was disallowed, where I thought it looked like the goaltender from Halifax kind of pushed the net a bit, and then they said the ball didn't cross the line. When I could see on the video replay, at least on TSN, it looked like that ball crossed the line on that goal that you guys had.
I guess the original call, the ref called, he thought the ball was in the net. That's why he called the goal. And then you watch the replay, and then it didn't actually go on the net. But it's tough to overturn, I guess, because you got to have conclusive evidence. But if the goalie moves the net, you don't shoot to where the net is, you shoot to where the net was supposed to be. So it would be it'd be nice if he called it a goal, obviously, but as being in the ref situation in his shoes, it'd be tough to have conclusive evidence like that. But it's unfortunate. I mean, you look at last game, we had two shorthanded goals that cost us a 1 goal game. Obviously, like shorthanded
Yeah.
goals are a killer, right? And then you look at the one in Philly, they got 1 or 2 shorthanded goals that game too, and that was a 1 goal game. So I think those last 2 road games, the difference between winning and losing those 1 goal games is definitely special teams.
Yeah, and the thing is, I didn't see the Philadelphia game because of one, we talked about the date being changed because of from Sunday to Monday to accommodate that NFL playoff game in Philadelphia, where the Eagles were playing the Los Angeles Rams. But the thing about that game was I didn't see it, but I've seen all the other games and I've seen all the home games. And there's a couple things I picked up off Kurt's interview about the 36 turnovers total and the 20 times offense turned the ball over, and then the 20 times you guys missed the net. And Kurt talked a little bit about, how Alex Athkes was so good on faceoffs at 70%, and you guys squandered some of those opportunities. And I was listening to Kurt's interview because he talked about something old school, going to the box, working on your craft, practicing, and, like he mentioned some hesitation about you guys getting into some dirty areas too.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the game, I think we had 38 shots on net and they had almost 50. So our goal as a team is to try to get 50 shots on net. If we ended up getting another 12 shots on net, 1 goal game, if just by looking at the stats, we'd probably win that 1 goal game.
Yeah, and let's not stay focused too much on this negative stuff because it's something to discuss, but it's also sort of like it's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde question, right? Because you guys have these struggles on the road. I didn't see the Philadelphia game, but I've seen every other game. And then I see how you guys played home, particularly how you came back against San Diego and how you played against Ottawa a couple of weeks ago, in which you absolutely dominated Ottawa. I mean, they scored the first goal. They only got 4 goals that entire game. And you guys, were clearly the better team throughout that game. I mean, Ottawa didn't really establish anything, I didn't think. And so maybe there's a lesson to be taken there, from being on the road versus being at home, or you can take some of that home magic on the road when, like we said off the top, the Calgary game was such a strong game for you guys. The whole
game. Yeah. I mean, if we knew what we did at home made the difference, it'd be easy to say, but everybody loves playing at home. Obviously, our crowd, it's easy when teams go on 1 or 2 goal runs. When the crowd gets behind, it's easy to build momentum that way. But yeah, I don't know if we're playing any different. Maybe the execution's there. Maybe we're using the crowd to our advantage, or we just have to the last two games we've let 3 5-on-5 goals in. So that just shows that we're a true 5-on-5 team. When we're playing 5-on-5 on offense, 5-on-5 D, we're really good. But we just got to, I think, difference maker is a special teams battle for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to share some stuff from the Calgary Roughnecks, but I also had a discussion with someone last week that you may be familiar with, and I reached out to him on Twitter, and that is Ty Marrow and Ty's site. And I had some notes from my conversation with Ty, and one of the things that he told me that was really valuable, I'm trying to dig through his stats more, just looking back in my notebook for his notes, was to, one of the most effective ways to evaluate the game of lacrosse is to look at even strength, because that's where 62% of the game is played, right? And so I was juggling my way through Ty's stats, looking at your last game against Halifax, and then sort of, trying to understand a little more in depth, at even strength, what you guys are performing like. And one of the things he had on his website is where your offense sits. And he mentioned that how strong your defense was, how guys like Jeff Cornwall were brought in, but then how you're challenged on offense. And so I thought that was an interesting point from Ty. But let's do this. Move ahead to the game against Calgary, because that's as equally as important as what happens tomorrow night at Rogers Arena. And let me know your thoughts on it, because you guys, there you are, right? Like, you're back at home again back in front of that home crowd. I don't know what the attendance is going to be like. I'm just sharing some information on Calgary in the background here while we chat, because that Calgary Roughnecks team is 3-1 on the road, and I've been to games in Rogers Arena the last couple of seasons. I know the team has changed a lot, where you guys had a tough time against Calgary at home.
Yeah, they're a good team. I mean, you look at their offense, they've got one of the best offense in the league. You got Dane Doby, Jesse King, Tanner Cook. And then on the other side, you've got Tyler Pace. You've got Hayden Dixon. Like that's a good offense there. And they've got a bunch of young D guys that can run the floor up well. Cam McLeod, you look at the game he played last week. I think he let 8 goals in, so they have the ability to be a shutdown D too. So it's going to be a big test, and I think they've got one of the best power play percentage in the league too. So staying on the box is going to be
all stats, because
staying on going to be big.
I remember thinking that game too against Calgary. I don't have the specific numbers. I mean, everybody knows. I've talked about it with Earl Thomas on the podcast. I talked about it with Steve Young from Post Media in the province, and you'd have to be living under a rock to not realize right now who's not playing for the Calgary Roughnecks, and that would be Christian Delbianco. And I remember when Brad Challoner, should give a shout out to Brad as well, when he was on my podcast in December, he was kind of chuckling about how, Delbianco's taking Twitter and all the stuff he's firing out on Twitter. My point about Cam McLeod was I thought he played quite a good game against you guys that game. In Calgary, and he was on the losing end. And, people are so focused, I think, when they see the Roughnecks and they see an opponent and they think, well, Christian Delbianco's not in net. What's it going to be like for a team to play Calgary, despite what's up front? So share a little bit more of your thoughts on Cam McLeod, because I thought he played well. I haven't seen him play a game since, but it's definitely one of the storylines, right?
Yeah, he's played well in the majority of the games this year. I thought he played really good against us. We had a lot of shots on net, a lot of quality shots.
Right.
I mean, holding the team to 8 goals is not an easy feat in the NLL. So anytime, like last game, I'm pretty sure, what was it, 10-8 they won?
Yeah, just
or 11-8.
Yeah, I think it was 11-8.
Yeah, so that's he definitely can play very good lacrosse, and we're expecting him to be at his best. I mean, it's not an easy situation that he came into, coming in late signing with Delbianco not playing, but he's definitely giving him a chance to win every single night.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, right? Because, I mean, obviously you guys are facing off against Calgary. It's probably the first game Calgary's played in Vancouver since Kurt left and then came here. Or did you? No, you guys played Calgary last year.
Yeah, they played here last year.
That's right. They beat us last year.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting for you guys, because obviously, that first loss to Colorado, then the 3 straight wins, then the 5 games in January, all the games on the road. I mean, those were all losses. 2 games at home were a win. So you're sitting at 4-4. I'm going to share the standings. Give me your little bit of your thoughts on that too, because you're sitting right in the middle of the pack, right?
Yeah. So obviously, Buffalo's first. What is it? Sask is second, and then there's a bunch of teams that kind of in the middle of the pack. So I mean, there's a lot of parity in this league. Any team can win any given night. I mean, look, I thought we played the majority of the game last game pretty good, if not even, and we took maybe 15 minutes off. We ended up losing a 1-goal game, right? So it just kind of shows that in order to win in this league, you gotta make sure you play 60 minutes.
Well, I know that Kurt, when I heard his post-game interview last week with the woman who's a Warriors reporter, Jill Meagher, Kurt was very blunt, as Kurt is wont to be. I'm sure you've experienced that, but I guess he tells it like it is, and he just said that's not good enough anymore. He goes, that's getting to be old, that excuse, us keeping losing 1-goal games, and that's why I pulled that quote out about getting the old school work ethic back to work. We got to go back to working and practice. And returning to the fundamentals, and he laid some of the blame on himself, but he was basically like, there's no excuse for that kind of a performance in Halifax, with a team at the time who was 2-4.
Yeah. I mean, Halifax, they were 2-4, but I think they won 2 of their last 3 games or something like that. So they're not like a bad team or anything by any means. They're better than the record shows, but it definitely
Right.
is getting old. There's never question on our compete or effort, all that. Now it just comes down to execution. We got to make sure we're executing well.
Yeah, and I think, like just looking at the schedule over the next couple of weeks, I mean, we got the home game tonight or tomorrow night, sorry. And next week you guys are in Las Vegas to play the Desert Dogs. And the following week's a big one. You guys are at home to take on the Saskatchewan Rush.
Yeah, no, we got a big
February
coming up. I mean, any game in this league's big, but you definitely want to go into the bye week on a high.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I feel like you guys will probably win tomorrow night because you're back at home and there's the home floor effect. And Kurt talked about that. And actually, I was listening to Brad Challoner's interview with Kurt from Christmas to, kind of get some info on this show and kind of get in the mood for some lacrosse listening to Brad talk. But Kurt talked a lot about, the buy-in from ownership and other parts of the organization. And one of the things that he said was how much the home crowd benefits you guys, but that also the home fans have that expectation that you guys are going to play well.
Yeah. No, it's nice. Everybody in the room enjoys playing at home. They feed off their energy, and kind of what I think everybody enjoys about this year. When you come to the rink, there's an expectation of winning. Not that it wasn't everybody wanted to win in the past, but we kind of were obviously rebuilding, and now there's that pressure of the expectation to win every night. So I know everybody loves that expectation. That means you're trending in the right direction. And fans come out to Vancouver, spend their money, and we want to make sure we work just as hard for them as they do for us.
Yeah, and I think that's, good spot to wrap it up. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it as always. We'll be looking for you tomorrow night on the floor, me taking pictures from the party zone and then sitting.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Brad. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Take care of yourself.